R3 is another one that it's restricted for any use, residential or commercial, because those are where our most precious natural resources are. So there was a question about a use in the R2 zone. There are 40 plus different commercial uses that are allowed in the R2 zone. The R2 zone's name is transitional residential. It's probably not the best name. That's just what the name has been since the implementation of the comprehensive plan. But since the beginning of that zone, commercial uses have been allowed. There's commercial uses allowed in just about every zone in Berwick.
All right, good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to Thursday, December 7th, 2023 Planning Board meeting. We could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, introduction to board members. To the far left, I have Paul Amatucci, Jerry Graybill, myself, Michael LaRue, Phil Roy, Les Bodwell, and Rick Rains. We also have Iris Griffith, the Code Enforcement Officer, Terry Wilson, the Assistant to Coding and Planning, and Hannah Watson from SMPDC. All right, first is the public hearing. We'll open that for Integrity Construction, Conditional Use, 500 Portland Street, R72, Lot 17, Zone RCI. You want to just come up and just give us a brief description?
Hello again.
Yeah, good evening. We're just seeking a conditional use for the building over at 500. Looking to put in a cabinetry shop. It was never outlined in the original plan, so we just got to identify the specific use.
Okay. Now, if there's anyone that wants to make a comment. So we just opened up the public hearing for the 500 Portland Street. So if you guys have any comments, now is the time. Okay. Okay. Well, seeing how no one else is here, so I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
I will second.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor? Okay. Next is the public comment.
Good evening. Tom Wright, 96 Cemetery Road. I was unable to make the meeting when you had the introduction to the community garden space. I was out of town at the time, and my laptop wouldn't send the email out I wanted you guys to all read before that meeting, so here I am tonight. Just want to give a background on that piece of property. It's the piece of property up behind the police station and the fire station. The site of the old Estabrook School is when the Hussey School was built, and the school system no longer needed that school, the town acquired it again, moved the police station into the lower part, the Doran section of it. And after that, the rest of it just sat there. The building itself, the Estabrook School itself, was used for storage for public works. And the police and the fire used it for their training. It's quite a mess in there. But as far back as 12 or 13 years ago, the Downtown Vision Committee, which was the precursor to the Envision Berwick Committee, were holding a series of meetings to identify properties in the downtown core area that would be vital to, developing the downtown and revitalizing it. And that was one of the places that was identified right off. A lot of different discussions about what was going on there. The town had actually entered into an agreement with an organization to put assisted living apartments there. I believe the 24 apartments were planned to be built there, but they didn't get their funding, and that fell through. It sat there for a while longer, and that's when Envision Berwick got incorporated and started looking, and that piece was still looked at for different uses. Eventually, the town voted to put the fire station on that property, and during that process, is we recognized that there was that piece out behind there was going to be vacant. And at the time, it was, I think, Mike, you were on the board at that time. Mm-hmm. It was quite a series of meetings we had discussing what was to go there. Some of the things that were discussed on going there was a skateboard park, a dog park, music festival area, things like that, which I argued at the time we were putting the station up that we should wait a few years and decide after we saw what was happening there and how things were working before we decided what to do with that space. I had originally proposed we put solar panels there, but that was shot down. When Amrita decided that she'd like to start community gardens, that was one of the first places I looked at and decided to investigate that piece. I think it works well. As you can see from what I just said, that the town has always intended to use that piece of property for something. And as I said, the community garden seems like the least intrusive use that we can put there to not affect the police and fire station and their business that goes on. We did have a meeting with the police chief and Carly from the fire department. They raised a bunch of issues that I know that Dennis and Amrita are working through, and hopefully we can get this all straightened out. So I believe your hearing is on January 4th is when it's scheduled, and I'll be back at that time. So, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
As a follow-up to that, Irish, is it on our, just on our plans to ensure that the police chief is available for that public hearing? Because I know he brought up some concerns, and I just want to make sure we are able to, he put them in the letter, but I would like the opportunity for him to speak to his concerns before the board so we can address those.
I can send him an email specifically inviting him and requesting that he attend.
I think there'd be a lot of value. He brought up some valid concerns from a law enforcement perspective, and I think we do have to, if we could find compromise and address those concerns, I think we owe it to him as a public servant of our town to do that for him.
I will do that, but if you don't mind, what I'd like to do is also include Chief Plant on that, give them both the opportunity
Absolutely.
to come here and speak. I don't
Absolutely.
want to just
Yep.
single one half of the lot out and leave the other out.
Yep.
So I'll send them both an email requesting that they come speak and address
Awesome.
the board.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Next is approval of minutes.
Oh, are we still in public comment?
Oh, yeah, if you want to.
Jeremy,
Public comment.
if it's about what you and I have been emailing about, you need to, okay. I was going to say, that needs to wait until they're back here.
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
Oh, you did.
Just making
yeah.
sure.
Well, I was wondering why it was blank there. It says approval of minutes. There's just nothing. No minutes.
Right, I took the
Okay.
the date off.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm running on battery. I'm going to read you guys a couple things. So if this dies while I'm reading to you, I'll plug it in. I wanted to start before I even did what. So you know why I'm here. We've talked. You folks have talked about getting public input, and I think traditionally before even I think James was involved or chairing Envision. Envision's done a lot of this sort of thing, talking about the town and planning and communication with citizens in the town. So we had already had a subcommittee formed thinking about this stuff, and so there's thoughts I'll share. But in the next week, I know we have another week, right? It's till the 15th to get stuff in. So we'll produce a document, and James has been working with us on some of this as well. So, but before I even get into that, I just want to say to all of you that the last meeting at 3.5 hours, like the extraordinary effort, where's the camera, for everybody here to be a volunteer and put in that time. It's just, I was in Vermont when that happened, in Burlington, that's why I wasn't here, and I listened to that meeting in the car from Burlington, Vermont to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and just made it. So it's extraordinary.
The fact that you didn't fall asleep.
It was riveting, man.
And it was cut, and we ran out of recording time on it, too.
Yes.
It went longer than...
I want to just interrupt briefly.
Yeah.
The deadline of December 15th, that's not like do or die for everything. That is just for consideration for this next round of updates, but people can continue to
Sure,
send
of course,
things in.
but we're looking at the June vote. And
Just in case if people are still listening at home, I
Sure.
don't want them to think if they don't get them in here in time.
Yeah, it's
so
rolling submissions, obviously.
Exactly.
But we're still trying to,
just clarifying.
there's two votes a year.
Yep.
Mysteriously, they change every year, I hear. But yeah, there are 2 votes a year, so we're trying to make the next one. So I just wanted to say, regardless of where we all fall in our opinions about life in our town and everything, the dedication and the everybody's heart is in the right place, and that's clear. And so, just worth mentioning. 3.5 hours, man. That's incredible. So I wanted to read you a couple things that we would love to look at putting in the mix coming up, and obviously this is something that our subcommittee that is at the moment sort of called sustainability, but also maybe something else because it's nobody loves the name, and Envision Borough give different sets of ideas, plus stuff we're working with James on. I've also been in touch with Lee J, who gave me a fabulous connection with the planner in Auburn, and they've done some fabulous stuff. So I'm trying to put what I can together for next week, and then some of it will be rolling. One of the things we've talked about is a larger lot size in general. We would like to make ours at least equal to our surrounding towns. R3 at the moment is 90,000 square feet. North Berwick's equivalent, the Farm and Forest, it's 160,000 square feet, and South Berwick, R4, R5, is 120,000 square feet. So it'd be nice to kind of set us up with even footing, making Berwick less desirable to developers in that way, so that we're not the town that's sitting here with, as a sitting duck with our neighboring towns, situated differently, and maintain some of our more rural character. We would like to look at enacting a growth ordinance that restricts the number of new residential building permits issued per year, restricting the number of homes built in individual development to 3 per year, limit the number of new developments started per year, and set a percentage of permits aside each year so that developers can't grab them all, and they're made available to individuals who are building outside of development. Again, you don't have to write everything down. I'll get it to you. But make the permits expire after a certain number of days so that developers can't just come in, grab them all up at the start of the year, as used to happen. The idea is to slow development and allow the town time to adjust, grow in a slow and steady manner, gives the town and school system the ability to make changes more gradually. Also allows time to see and mitigate the potential impacts to our infrastructure, water, sewer, environment, etc. We would love to look at a right to farm law protect both current and future agriculture in the town, protecting farms and farmers, and alerting people moving in that they're moving into a rural community and there are some less than pleasant aspects of agriculture that they will have to learn to live with, as we all do in moving to a place like this. When we protect prime farmland as part of developments or subdivisions, it has to be maintained, we hope, as a single accessible piece, not broken up into little pieces that farmers would not have access to. Also put a requirement in, we hope, that the development/subdivisions are responsible for maintaining that land in the current state. Field must be maintained as a field to keep it available and open for agriculture. That's from Envision Berwick. This is from our subcommittee, whatever we're at the moment called sustainability, but it's sort of agriculture, open space, rural protection subcommittee. We're looking at asking to increase development fees higher in certain zones and lower in others. Right now, they're the same across the board. Increase density in some areas and protect prime land by making minimum lot sizes much larger, as we talked about. Not paying for infrastructure in areas that could be preserved and not developed. Apply impact fees to areas with prime farmland that goes to acquisition of farmland of statewide significance. This is something that we've talked a lot about with James that I think he'll be helping articulate, but a transfer of development rights, do you all understand how that would work? It's you sell your development rights in a rural area and send them to higher density areas, much like a conservation easement. For example, an owner in R3 sells development rights to someone in R2 or R1. The owner of R3 does not develop the land. I mean, there's a lot of complicated stuff around this, but these are all good things to start keeping an eye on and thinking about in terms of, comprehensive plan, following the surveys, what the citizens are asking for, basically. Recognizing the difference between families and developers, creating a tiered system that has tighter regulation for larger cumulative landowners. The different rules and incentives minimize the impact of development on the town. Adjust zoning between railroad tracks and zoning transition on Route 4. Commercial and industrial lots could and should be developed in a way that creates wildlife corridors, if possible. That's something we'd love to have. And we talked about that in our group meeting the other night. That's my laptop dying. The rest is stuff that we have started to articulate with James. So I will work with him to prepare a document that includes everything I just blew through very quickly, as well as more specific stuff that's actually deals with what we already have and how we would like to look at adjusting it. So it's not just sort of fire hosing ideas, but placing them within the ordinance. Thank you. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate everything you all do.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Jeremy.
Jeremy.
All right, so no approval of the minutes. So we're moving to old business, Integrity Construction, conditional use, 500 Portland Street, R72, Lot 17, Zone RCI.
I like you guys, but not that much.
That's how I felt about yours.
Singer. It's in the old packet, right?
Mr. Chair, I will be recusing myself from this discussion.
Okay, thank you.
I'm assuming there were no issues on the site walk.
No issues with the building.
No, I think that one of the issues that was pointed out to us by code was that the building currently does not have a certificate of occupancy, so cannot be occupied.
Yeah, and I would argue we're not occupying the building at this time.
But I think for us to approve, doesn't it have to have a certificate of occupancy or
Well, that will be a condition of
or
approval.
a condition
Yeah.
of approval?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with that being a condition of approval.
Okay.
So we're looking for a motion to find the application complete with conditions, is that?
I thought we found it complete last time.
We are,
Approving with conditions. I think approved with conditions, yeah.
yeah. Now, is that the only condition we want to condition? Is the CO?
That's all that I found. It seemed to,
Do we have the from the site walk, you mentioned about the fire alarm system being put in, that'll be part of
Everything,
of the occupancy, right?
So they have to comply with the state electrical inspector, which Brian will send me something from that. The Chief Plant and I had walked through and met with the owner and the applicant. They know what they need to do for all the things for fire. And then once I have those two things, and obviously his dust collector needs to be finished collecting, hooked together. Once all of that's done, then I can go through and issue the actual certificate of occupancy. But they won't get that until those items are tended to. Those are all tied into the CO.
You don't have to spell it all out. Then.
Nope.
Yeah,
You don't have to sell
that's
it.
what
If
I'm
you
just
put it
asking.
CO, then it all lands in my lap, and they have to put all the pieces together just like any other commercial business would.
Okay. Makes it easy for us. Then.
Yes, we try to make it easy for
That's
the
why
board
I-
to.
That's why I was asking. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
I'll make a motion to approve this application,
Conditional use.
conditional use application for this property at 500 Portland, pending certificate of occupancy and code finding them up to date. So, yeah, I think that's it.
Can I just ask you a question on that before you? So, do we have to put that as a condition, certificate of occupancy? I mean, that's pretty standard procedure, isn't it, that you get approved for a use, then you get a certificate of occupancy?
I think the board is doing it, I think the board does it as a kind of a clarification, because I think most of the places that come through here that are conditional use are already constructed, or
They already have the CO.
they already have a CO of
It's kind of
some
semantics,
kind.
but it just seems like a, if we approve a subdivision, right, and they don't build until they get a building permit, but we don't make it a condition of the approval to get a building permit.
But the difference with that is that a building permit is not already issued and required to be closed out. When you do a subdivision. With a subdivision, they're approving the concept of the use of the land, which then means you have to comply with all the building
Isn't
permits.
that what we're doing
For
now?
this particular issue, this is just approving the use of the building in a building that is unlike most of the others that have come before this board in my time here. Actually, I think this is the only one that hasn't had a CO as of yet. So I think
Right.
it's the intent of the board to just clarify that while the use may be an approved use, that it can't actually be used until the CO is issued.
Okay.
Am I correct in that, Mr. Chair?
I will second your motion.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor? Okay. Thank you. Moving on.
I had a half a second thought where I was like, why isn't Rick voting yes? Recuse myself.
All right,
Unless he fires me.
Because Rick wants to get fired.
all right, so new business, Rick is now coming back on. Approval and adoption of site walk protocol.
I'm going to make a motion that we approve, but I would like to make a comment,
Thank you.
two comments actually. I think this has always been very clear to us all, and I think the nexus of this was our site walk for the gas station, which I found to be very peculiar that we had it being recorded and televised. We've never done that on a site walk previously, so I just, that was peculiar. And
I can
will.
speak to that.
Okay, may I finish?
Yes.
The other issue was there was a gentleman who wasn't a butter. He was obviously having a hard time with mobility, and he was not able to walk the property. So I did depart from the group to go meet that gentleman on his property line and ensure that he did receive an abutters notice and he knew why we were there. And that was the extent of my conversation. So I understand this, and I just want to make sure that my actions were not misconstrued in any way. But I do believe as a board, it is incumbent upon us to, I know we can't discuss the particulars of the project, but to be welcoming and serve the people we have sworn to serve. And that was the purpose of my outreach to that gentleman. So if somebody misconstrued my actions, I'm a big boy, come talk to me. I don't think this is necessary, but I will vote to make a motion that we accept this.
Well, actually, I can kind of say three things, two things. So first, to why it was recorded and televised, that was a choice by BCM because with this project having been such, obviously, it's a very emotionally charged, is a good way, I think, to put it, kind of thing that's before the town. It was a choice by BCM to attend, record it, televise it, because in light of the weather, obviously, as you saw,
Was
minimal
that their
turnout.
choice, or were they directed to record?
As far as I know, it was their choice. They would have to speak to that.
She
but
just
they-
wanted-
It's just peculiar
They
that
were
has
not-
never happened with another project in my time. So
I
it just
can-
seemed very peculiar, that's
I
all.
can tell
Not a
you
typical
that
project.
it's not a typical project. It's not a typical thing, but I can tell you that I have seen videos of site walks on the BCM channel. So it appears they have done this a few times.
Okay.
Second, I was there at the site walk. I never saw you go talk to the neighbor. Terry was not there at the site walk. Terry is the one that wrote this up. So there would be no reason to think it was you. That genuinely was because a former planning board member, Nicole Facto, came in and said something to us about how she had been aware that we were not necessarily doing things properly, the optimal way and the way we should at site walks. So
Okay. I guess it's
Terry
just a
took the
coincidence,
initiative.
but I certainly wanted to address my actions if it was my
Appreciate the
actions.
transparency, but it certainly
Absolutely.
was actually in works, probably about 3 weeks before, I think.
Okay.
It also
Because she
helps
brought us
to-
cookies.
Yeah, it also helps to understand
She brought us
that
cookies.
it makes sense to keep the group together so that we're all hearing the questions and that the questions are directed to one person.
Mm-hmm.
I need this document myself because I broke half of these protocols myself this evening.
I was going to say myself, I'm quite guilty of wandering off and talking with groups, so.
And we did.
So just to clarify,
So our
is it
hands are-
within the scope of a board member, right? If we see somebody who clearly has a physical impediment that precludes them from being able to go on the site walk, is it appropriate just to assert and say, did you get your abutters notice, and are you aware of the public hearing?
I think
Is
that's
that-
a
is
question
that-
for either Mike or Hannah to answer.
I just want to
because-
make sure that's appropriate, because I feel like it's our job to be available to the public, is it
Maybe
not?
it's more appropriate if Irish or I do that.
Okay.
And you
Not
stay
it.
with the board.
Mike,
Or-
I'd ask Hannah on that.
Okay.
I think
Hannah, do you want to weigh in on that one?
I would say it's probably most appropriate for the chair to do that.
yeah, I don't
Okay.
want to be
Or
it.
if another board member were to just say, "Hey, Mike, I just spoke with this gentleman or whatever," but make sure the chair knows
Okay.
at the time that it's happening if he isn't the one to do it.
Okay, I appreciate the clarification.
No, we all get spanked at the same time with this one, Phil. You're not
I'm a big boy,
alone.
I can handle it.
I wander off too. So when I was reading it, I was like, I'm guilty. I'm guilty. Guilty.
Just as a general comment on this, after going through X number of site walks over the years, people always are walking up to you, giving their opinion of this and that and the other thing. And my canned response to all of them is, we're just here to look. The public hearing is a place to talk. And in the intervening time, if you have issues that you want addressed, send an email to planning, and so that it can be brought up. But we can't do it here. So that's kind of the canned pitch that I give everybody.
That's
So that we
That's
can't
good.
discuss it there.
I like that, Paul, because
Yes.
I can see myself getting caught in those rabbit holes where
Yeah.
you want to be friendly and open, and you're a member of the community, so you want you don't want to be like, I can't talk to you, but
And the
can't
thing
talk
is,
to
too, this
this.
document is also going to help guide future planning board members that as people may come on and off of the board. So it's
yeah. I mean, there's stuff here that I may not have even thought about
Exactly. And I didn't.
And urging the public to save their comments for the public hearing ensures that everybody hears it because it's televised. So
I would like to add that if this is like the epitome of a gray area on a sidewalk. We're supposed to follow these rules. We all break the rules, but we're asking to set rules, and that's fine. But I think the public also needs to be informed what's okay and what's not okay. So I'm wondering if a very short blurb is given to the chair and said at the beginning of every site walk, this is why we're here, this is what's okay, this is what's not okay. It might take away some of those needing to tell them, to send an email or whatever, just so that we're consistent in setting our rules so that we follow them better, and then hoping that the public will follow
We set
them.
the right expectations.
Yeah. Just a quick
Good
little,
idea.
when you
Summary.
start the site walk,
okay.
Because I know you don't have enough to do
And
already.
I'll print him a little
stating
card.
the intent of
Yeah,
why
so
we're
little-
here.
what the expectations are of everybody there, what we're doing there, what the public's doing there,
That's a great-
when they
that's a great
can.
idea.
Yep.
have
Yeah,
an
totally
opportunity.
agree. I like it.
You send out a butters notices, right?
Yes.
That should go in that, so they know.
Yeah.
As well, I think
As
in
well.
addition,
Yeah.
saying sometimes they get in a butters notice and they read the first paragraph about what's it about and then
Yeah.
they just forget
Well,
the
sometimes
rest.
they're not even butters.
Right, exactly.
But at least they've been told, so.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
We could also add it to the abutters notice with a line like, if you, in bold letters, if you plan to attend, please read.
Yeah.
And have that. Because it
Communication
would
is
be
key.
easier.
Yep.
And they'll make
Right,
the
right.
site walks a lot faster, which,
Yeah.
no offense to any of y'all, because I love hanging out with y'all, but we freeze. We just want to get in and out, get out of there.
I hate to say this, but you could take it one step further. On the abutters notice, you have like a section. If you have comments or stuff, put it on this and mail it in or whatever after the site walk to make sure that they get answered. You give them a place to put their thoughts down instead of verbalizing it. We do that in a lot
an
of
idea.
what I do. We
If
give
I
the
can
people
get it
a
all on
comment.
one page, more than willing to do that. It's not a
I'm just
bad
saying.
idea.
Yeah, I'm just saying. It works out good because what I do, we do the same thing when we do stuff.
Just got a cat attack.
Hannah's entertaining us.
I want to see the kitty's face, though. Anyway, yeah, I'll
But
see
anyway,
if I
it's
can
good.
tweak
I mean-
those. That's
Yeah.
all great suggestions.
Yep. So based on that, I would make a motion that we approve the protocol and adopt it.
I will second.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor? Okay.
Jealous I didn't see the kitty.
Next is land use ordinance amendments.
Oh, God. I didn't even think about this part.
I would like to say thanks for your efforts for getting the public engagement going and getting this stuff back in from the public is, one, it makes our job easier. Two, it's what we're supposed to be doing. So
It's
I
important.
like that. One piece that I have a concern, and I think the last time we went through this, there are certain left end, right end limits of what we can do with the land use ordinance. So before we digest each of these one for one, would it be appropriate for either the attorney or for James or somebody who's better versed in what is and is not allowed to help us digest these so we're not wasting, and I don't want to use the term wasting time, but expending effort on something that is not within the realm of possibilities.
Spending effort on something that belongs to somebody else's wheelhouse. Yes.
correct.
Yeah, because some things were just
or
opinions
that we're
or
not-
statements.
Part of it, part of what is, I think, and surprise Terry, surprise James, if you're listening. Part of what I want to do is I want to take all of these comments. We've set the deadline for the 14th for this go around of, for anything that's going to be considered for this next election. Anything we receive after that will be considered, but for a different time. And that gives us time to put all this stuff together and group it, because there are a lot of things like all these with an extra light sidewalk kind of things. Those are more of a public works thing. However, I've refrained from making any sort of comment like that, because quite frankly, I'd rather be doing the weeding out of the comments and directing what needs to Public Works or what have you, or like the 236 stuff if it's on the wrong side of 236 to the state, and at least get that input from the residents. But you're right, we need to have this be stuff that you know, are
Can
able
adjust,
to work
are
on.
able to adjust.
I picked up on the same thing. There was
Yeah.
a fair amount of things that
Just are not in our
was
purview.
not in our wheelhouse.
So would you guys like to put these on hold for right now instead of having
We can
your
clean it
coffee, instead of having your coughing code officer read all these into?
Yes, I would. But also, just to further clarify, that we had a couple of months ago, prior to the last election, we had a joint meeting with the select board, and at least on one issue in particular, which is now in front of us, we had all decided here together as a group, select and planning, what we said would be the criteria for that. After which it went to select to get put on the ballot and got changed. So I'm just wondering, what's our job here? I mean, why do we go through that when it's going to get changed anyway? Because I thought we had agreement on a few things that just did not translate onto the ballot. So they did get changed during the select meeting. And if that's their purview, fine. But why are we doing this?
Well, I think that our job is to make a recommendation to the select board, and the select board and the town attorney tweaks it and tunes it and puts it on the ballot. So
This wasn't tweaked. This
Completely changed.
This was changed.
Substantially.
So I think that
so-
one thing that I would say, though, a little bit off of that, but in reference to tabling this, this is stuff people did what we asked them to do and put this before us, and to table this whole document until the next meeting puts it out of the deadline.
Well, I think
No, I mean, no, it's not going to be, they got till December 14th to submit them to us. I'm talking about tabling them, reading them into record, and we can get them all, because this isn't all of them, these are just what you've received since last meeting. So we're compiling them, like, all of them
Okay,
together.
I just
Because what we
people
have
are actually
by-
putting the effort in to put them in front of us. So I want to deal with them.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, that's
Absolutely.
right. Okay.
The
So,
one thing I
but
wanted-
the thing is that the deadline is for them to send them in so that you guys can then start working on what, incorporating them into the actual verbiage of the ordinance. You got to pick which pieces of the pie out of this, so to speak, you're going to be working on, what you feel is something that you can make recommendations for, something the board itself is in agreement on making changes that you guys can discuss whether you're going to handle it or not. So what I'm suggesting is absolutely not like tabling it until it's out of questions, but they still have time to submit further things. But we stopped the submittal.
Okay.
So we stopped the
receiving
submittal
them.
on the 13th for this particular cutoff, just so that we would have time to put everything together, get it to you guys, and you guys would have time to digest all the information, and you each can pick out what you feel is important out of this to hit for. And I'm glad you brought it up and asked questions, because we don't want you just looking at it and saying, yep, want to deal with this now, yep, want to deal with this now. Everything else just goes in the round file. You guys are fully capable of saying, all right, you know what, we think we've got a whole ton of good suggestions here. We're going to tackle these 6 things, and we're going to put these 6 things off, and they'll end up on the next, potentially the next ballot after this one. It's just to get this LUO update stuff is going to be on every agenda from here until we're gone and somebody else says we're not doing this no more,
What's the deadline for getting things on the ballot for June?
For anything that's submitted to us right now, they have to get it to us for you guys to review by the
No, I mean,
For
so,
us, the board, to get it on the ballot.
well, no.
February.
When-
It goes to
when-
the select-
February.
Let's work backwards. We have a vote in June. The things that are on that
yeah,
ballot.
we have a. You want to
Is
go
it like
on
February,
the
April?
paper?
What's the big?
The paper that's
Yeah,
very
Patty
top.
has
gave you-
a
a sheet.
How many
that
months
has-
before?
Yes.
It has
I
to
want to
be-
say it's either
The one
late
year old
February
that
or
needs
early
something she's talking
April
So it could be
or
3,
March.
could be 3 months prior.
Yep. Yep. Because it has to go to the
So
town
we have a
attorney.
little
It has
bit
to
of
go to
time
the
to work through
selectmen.
these things
Yeah.
until the selectmen make their final.
We have about 4 or 5 meetings.
So here's
Yeah.
here's what's going to happen at this exact moment. Terry is running next door because when Patty gave us all the deadlines, we requested all the deadlines, and Patty and Terry worked it backwards, like you said. Now she had it hung on the wall. I'm hoping she still does. Can't guarantee that,
Hannah's got something.
but she's going to check it.
Hannah?
It's February 15th.
February
Is when it's
15th.
got to go to select board.
No, that's
It says February 15th, 2024, paperwork of proposed ordinance changes due to town manager from boards, committees, and department heads. February 20th, presentation to Board of Selectmen by boards, committees, and department heads. February 20th, public discussion at selectmen meeting, and then so on.
so we have 3 meetings.
So would it be reasonable so we come out of this meeting with an action that we're going to hold ourselves accountable to? I read through these
And I just read the
recommendations,
actual-
and I think they're great. What I don't want to get into is the quandary we got into last time, where we're like, yeah, this is a good idea, and we're told that that's not in our wheelhouse. Case in point, a lot of the stuff that was brought up by Envision Berwick and their input with regard to larger lot sizes, restricting building permits, and the limit of number of permits issued to control growth. I'd be a huge advocate of that. I think it's a good idea. Is that within our purview, and is it legal? And those are the questions that I have, because otherwise, if it's not legal and it's not within our purview, then we're just spinning our wheels.
No,
And I just want to make sure
all of those things are in the purview of the planning board.
They are.
Yep.
Okay.
They are. They are also being worked on by other departments and other committees. And James is working with those committees to try and, and I was told today the comprehensive plan appears to be on track for vote for June 2025 election. So, and that's part of
June
why.
2025.
2025, because they're working through the, actually, I think they're pretty much hitting the growth section of that. And there is some, as you said, there's some concerns about what may or may not be legal for the town to do, and we certainly don't want to trample anybody's legal rights, because that's absolutely the exact opposite of what we want to do.
I think that's what one person submitted an email
Yes.
basically saying that when you do things like that, you devalue somebody's property.
Right.
Yeah,
And
Mr.
For me, my thing
Has-
about, the comments from Envision Berwick, if we can talk about that now, and limiting, building permits, I've seen that done in towns, and it's not very successful, and it, stifles growth in a town. And if somebody said, this town is growing so fast that we're overburdening the fire department, we're overburdening the school system, okay, I could see that. But all indications that I've seen so far is that none of that is happening. We're not putting a burden on the sewer district, not putting a burden on the schools, on the fire department, on the police department. So why would we?
You left out one key one, though, and it's the water department. And we've had those discussions, and I think that's a big one that we do have to, we can't bury our head in the sand when it comes to basic needs and being able to support growth. And I'm not averse to the growth, but when we went how many months where, basic human necessity, potable water, was not available to our
Well,
residents.
I think
that was a
that's two
huge-
separate issues, right?
Right.
The issue of that there was some malfunctions and some things going on at the water department that was not correct, right? That, somebody dropped the ball or something happened there. But that doesn't mean that we're burdening on the water supply at the current rate of growth. And I being a developer, that's one of the things that we have to look at every project. And, we have to talk to the water department, and everything that I've seen to date is that, we're at very low capacity, very low usage of our overall capacity. The sewer district has said multiple times that they have a whole nother station. They haven't even fired up yet.
Yeah.
So I just think that, you know, having that information in front of us to look at, to make those decisions makes more sense to me than just going on a feeling or.
Correct.
We've asked for that over the past year. And
We
haven't
have
had it,
not
so we
gotten
know.
it in writing. There's been some emails back and forth, like, oh yeah, they said this. But
Yeah,
I think
like
what
the
we're
water
looking for
tower
is
holds a million
commitment.
gallons,
Right.
Yep.
and it doesn't even get low pressure until it's used over 600,000 gallons. And that's.
But where is
We
that?
only
Where
use
is that in
300,000
writing for us to be
from
able
what I
to
remember.
make business-based
From what I
decisions
remember, we
on?
use 300,000 gallons.
Yeah, we use about 300,000 a year.
So, with no disrespect to anybody intended, I don't, and I say that in case anybody from Maine Water's watching, the water district, I think Maine Water has put in writing about as committal as they're going to, which is we have ample capacity. And they like the sewer department, they have ample capacity, and that's all they're going to say. They're not going to estimate how much, and I think that has to do with their ever-changing systems. But that's why each project, as it comes forward, has to show that they have consulted Maine Water and the sewer department if required, because they have to be able to show that, and that.
But if they're getting the same standard canned answer of, sure, we have capacity, and I'm not poking at anybody, but what I'm saying is, if we can't get, it's just planning. That's what we're charged to do. And if we don't know what that capacity is, and we're getting.
That's when we get out of the scope of the planning board.
Yeah.
All it's all compartmentalized, and when water says it's okay, that's all the planning board's looking for. It's just like with the fire. It's just like with the police.
May I play devil's advocate here?
Yep.
Part of the problem, I think, with that, Mr. Vice Chair, is the fact that they might be able to say, okay, you know what, we can handle, let's just, for ease of use, we can handle another 1,000 households. How many bedroom households? How many of them can go to planning? How many of them can be ADUs that Irish can permit? That all these things that are outside of the planning board's purview and scope to even review. They can't really give you guys a number of units that you can give, because it varies based on bedroom size, basis businesses. Every business has a different use capacity.
So is it beyond the scope of a reasonable ask that we have some type of a planning matrix where, I mean, there was a period in time that we were not able to deliver clean water to the people we serve. So
I think that's beyond the board.
Drought times.
I think that's beyond the board's ability to request, because what you would be doing is asking an organization to try and answer to a slew of unknown variables. That
so
will
it's
come
an
before.
ambiguous number that we live to.
No, it's an ever-changing number that you live to, because everything that's come between. Well, I'm gonna pick on Les here. So Les came before you with Norman Court. He had to go to the water district and say, all right, water, sewer, this is what I want to do. Can you handle it? And they had to tell him yes or no. Well, in between then and now, the number of things that I've approved that have gone on, that changes things. So the number they were utilizing, all their numbers they were working with when Les was there for Norman Court, not the same as what Terry's going to be here for, Berwick Acres for next week. It's just not going to, it's always going to change. So they can't actually give you anything that's going to make sense in the long run for you to actually work off of, I don't think.
I think what we're all trying to say, in one way or another, I know from my standpoint, when they say, okay, yeah, we can support this project, okay, how many of those projects can we support before the town infrastructure has to be changed and additional funding?
That goes through the Board of Selectmen. That goes through the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
Yes,
all
and
those issues, because they do have an annual report that the water district has to. The same with sewer; they all go through the selectmen, and they have these reports.
And I understand that you're asking that, Jerry, but the answer remains the same. They can't tell you can do X many projects, because how many bedrooms, how many washer machines, how many you
They
know,
just go by
How many
usage.
businesses are going to
how many
go in
businesses are
between
going to be there?
those?
There's,
With all due
sewer
respect,
sewer
much.
district has an engineering
there is
standard for
statistical
bedroom.
analysis. That
There
it's not a
is.
mystery. It's not pie in the sky. It's it's empirical data, and that can be used based on historical and current usage. So it isn't, oh gee, I don't know. It looks like it's okay. We really, somebody's got to do those, and maybe they do.
they do
They
that
just
when
don't
each
share it.
project. They do that when each project is brought before them. They factor
So,
that
so
on
when the
their
next
end.
project is brought before them, do they then say, okay, here's the ones we've approved already, and that's, what we're expecting to come online within the next 18 to 24 months, and therefore this is added to that. Do they do that? I mean, I would
assume they
love to
do.
know how they
So
do their math.
I have
I don't work
a
there.
thought. And
I'd
from
love
my
to.
standpoint, I mean, I love data. I love numbers. Knowledge and information is critical. And looking for a specific household number, bedroom number, gallons per minute number, capacity number is going to be difficult.
Yes,
But
that's
what
what
I would like to see perhaps is more of a percentage number. We are at only 20% of our capacity to run a water in this town.
We've been asking for that for about a year.
Yeah.
So more of a just percentage guess. I don't think we can get down to the gallon, but I think that we can get we don't even have another station open. We have a whole other station we can do. So we're not even at 50% capacity. Some kind of knowledge like that, I think, would make me feel better to know that we're not even close to running dry in the well. Kind of a
I
thing.
think that information has been provided,
Yeah,
but
it's
not
about 30%.
the water. Right?
Yeah, the water.
The water,
And
they say we're at about 30%.
The
That
sewer's
email
not
went
even
out
close to
a while ago.
50%.
I wonder, my question would be, I wonder if it's part of the comprehensive plan, if we said, look, historically, over the last 10 years, we've grown at a rate of 6%. And if we continue on that trajectory, in 15 years, we're going to need a bigger water supply or a bigger sewer district, right? That would be, if it's possible to attain something like that, would be ideal, because the thought of, stifling growth for no reason.
Well, even with the last joint meeting that we had when Les and I and Don was there, the growth projected in the 90s, we were supposed to be over 10,000 residents.
Right, that was Tom. I
Yeah.
think Tom was talking about
Yeah.
that, right?
And we're at 8,600.
And that's why I thought the thing, when he was saying that, I'm like, all the data that I've seen, all the growth stuff up on the wall there indicates that we're not even growing at any accelerated rate. It seems like we're exploding on the scene. I mean, it seems like we got developments going on everywhere, but the data says different. The data says how many students are in school. Our perception, because we see every project, right? The perception of somebody, because a development gets built in their backyard, is that we're exploding, and the data just doesn't support that. So
Well, and there's a lot of cluster divisions too, so you see all the houses right up against the road.
Right.
So it looks like the town's got 1 billion houses, but you go up in a plane and you look down, it's all forest.
Yep, it's all green. Yep.
And I'll also mention that, years ago, I don't remember the exact date, but maybe 2005, when I built my house in North Berwick, North Berwick had a moratorium on building permits, and they limited the number of building permits. And Berwick said, you know what, we're going to lift the moratorium. Build whatever you want for houses. And in North Berwick, when I got my building permit, there was literally a lottery system. You went in there were, I don't remember the exact number, but 36 of us, and there were 33 permits issued that year. And everybody, called the number, you got a permit, or you didn't. And to what end? In Berwick, they lifted the moratorium. I lived in North Berwick then, and it didn't collapse the town. So I'd need to see a reason beyond, it seems like we're growing too fast, for me to be in favor of any type of limiting growth. And if somebody presented that to me and said,
I think
then I would
where
be in
a
favor.
lot of issue is they want to limit outside growth. They want to limit growth in the R3 zones and more residential areas and try to promote the growth downtown The thing is, like you said before in recent meetings, is the density needs to change. You know, if we want the people to congregate towards downtown, we need to make it so more people can live downtown. Hence, like, we're building the Edge, but even like when it comes down to apartment buildings around here, like the apartment buildings should be able to be bigger on a lot in downtown, so that way we can fit more people downtown.
Yeah, and I'm going to submit something before the 14th. Basically, I'm going to take the excerpt from North Berwick's land use ordinance, where they have overlay districts, which changes the density from, 10,000 square feet on public water and sewer to 2,500 square feet. So, you know, on a half-acre lot, you could theoretically get 8 units. And if you think about an 8-unit apartment building, is not that big of a footprint, really, with parking, you know?
Yeah.
So something like that may make sense for us, and that's going to be my proposal. The other thing I would say about, you know, when he was talking about R3, I get that, right? Like, you know, a town, the way I look at it is, a town is planned like a wagon wheel, right? So you look at the hub, look at how closely populated those spokes are, and as you get out, right, they're more sparsely populated and more area. We already have pretty stringent regulations in R3 and in R2 without town water and sewer, right? What is it, 3 building permits per year?
Yep.
In a subdivision, so
Yes.
so you know, we already have tight regulations to slow that growth in those areas, and that's why we don't see a lot of subdivisions in R3, because from a developer standpoint, it doesn't make sense to, you know, spend $400,000 or $500,000 for a piece of land and
sit on
hundreds
it
of
for 9
thousands of dollars to
years.
get a little bit of road in to sell 3 houses. So I think that's already in play. But yeah, again, to really, for me, to be on board with limiting economic growth, I'd have to see data that suggests that would be healthy for the town, or the growth rate we're at is unhealthy.
May I for a minute
I was
just
just
circle
going
back
to
around?
comment about that graph right there.
You
That's,
can do that real quick, but just
Okay.
because I want to make sure that
Yep.
Mr. Roy knows that he was heard, I will email James and the sewer department, see if I can at least get a percentage of capacity.
I think that's a.
I don't know if they'll
reasonable-
give us anything. I make no promises and no putting my head on the chopping block
No,
if
I
they
don't-
tell
we're
me
not
to
asking
go.
anybody to do that, but I think what we
They
have
didn't,
asked for in the
but-
past is the percentage, where we're at on that percentage, but also, and I think it's important that, you know, the sewage department has gone on the record formally and said, we're good. The water department, not so much. And I'm not trying to hold anybody's feet to the fire, but our feet are being held to the fire for, you know, reasonable development. We did have a water issue, and regardless of what caused that, we can't bury our heads in the sand about that issue. And I don't think it's unreasonable to ask them, what is your current capacity? What is your future capacity?
I'll
And
reach out
what
again.
is your demand signal going to be for you to say, we need to expand, or we need to stop? We're not going to have enough water. I just, that's the responsible thing for us to do as a board.
I will email again
Right on.
and see what I can do, okay?
I think one
appreciate that.
of the things to consider with that conversation is also that, you know, what percentage of the developments come in here that are not on the town water
Correct.
supply.
Like,
Yep.
it's majority of R2 and R3, almost all of R3.
Yeah.
I don't know of any
Private water and
Right.
sewer,
Yeah.
private
Yeah.
well and septic.
Yep.
So I think as a way forward, if I may, Mr. Chair, we have these lists that were provided to us, and these are great, and it's a lot to digest. If we each digest this and come up with our top 10, and then when we come back, we compile and find out what our priorities are, that we were holding ourselves accountable to some forward momentum on this in particular. But in the interim, if we could get a chop from James or legal on what is appropriate and not appropriate for us to attack, so we're not wasting our efforts.
Yeah.
But I
Well-
think if we could each pick our top 10, and when we
I don't
convene
even
next
think we
time,
have 10.
We absolutely have more than that. on-
Well, a lot of these.
Well, some of them are just
these
statements
not-
like
Oh, yeah.
lighting on around Lyman Street. That would
Right.
be wonderful. That's not the purview
You're
of the
gonna-
planning
Yeah.
board.
No.
Yeah,
No,
but you're
this-
gonna
We have
see
a
a few
lighting
that
board.
I'm gonna float through Hannah.
Yeah.
But, so, wait, who am I emailing? Oh, Phil and James. Okay. I had to stop and think.
But
I started writing and then
If you look
started
at
talking.
this bottom of the suggestions, this
Yep.
is from our office. You can
Yep.
always do something like this, literally,
Yep.
that
Okay.
short, that brief,
Yep.
you know? I did feel like I should share people's entire emails.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Especially
Yeah, no, I-
initially, right? But
Yeah.
now you can feel free to go through them and mark them up.
Look,
I'm
the only
super
thing I want
excited
to know
to
is,
see people.
Engaged.
Oh, yeah.
Engaged in
Yeah.
the process. It's huge. Yeah.
I just want to know if I need to read them out loud or are
No.
we skipping
Not today.
that right now?
Not today.
Okay.
Do we want to, when we reconvene, everybody prioritize what your top 5 or 10 are, and let's make that our focus, so we're not losing track of this and we miss the mark for the election.
So, to be clear, the process for us, we're going to discuss, review, figure out what we think are good, quote-unquote, recommendations. We may or may not have another joint meeting. We will likely present something to the
We won't have
select board.
another joint meeting.
Okay, so
Yep.
our recommendations, though, will be sent to the selectmen.
Yeah,
who
I
then-
go.
You do
and-
that?
Yeah.
And then they review and
Or
discuss.
the chair at that moment. Because
Okay.
it might be changing
Okay.
in January. Who knows?
Okay.
Just saying.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
Not saying I won't do it. I'd still do it. But.
And then the select board will regurgitate and discuss and figure out what then goes on the ballot.
Yep.
So in,
And then it goes to the.
Then it goes to the attorney.
legal. It goes to
Okay.
our town attorney
So there's
to
another step.
review to
Yeah.
make sure that we're not violating anybody's constitutional rights.
okay.
Yeah,
So-
then it
that's
goes.
January.
So I guess in the in the theme of transparency, what I'd like to say to Paul's point is that there's more than one step that people can just throw an idea in. Yes, we have a deadline for us to receive these things, but selectmen meetings are open to the public,
Yep. And there's a public
information
hearing
should be
for
brought
that.
to them
Yep.
at any time to get it out in the open and on the table of what townspeople want and think. Because I think what Paul said was important, that, you know, we did a bunch of work and we made our recommendations, and yeah, they're only recommendations, but at the next step, it was out of our hands and things were just really different. And I'd like people to know that even though things change as they go, they still have opportunity to voice their opinion.
And it wasn't us.
It wasn't us. And it wasn't us.
Our hands were clean.
So do we want to make a commitment for each of us to come back with our top 5 or top 10?
Yeah, I
Right.
can do
Or
that.
our top recommendation.
Top recommendations, and then we can
Move
target,
on from
focus on those and put out the best product we can.
I would like to offer my services to the board, that if any of these kind of tickle your fancy and you're having a hard time figuring out for yourself what ordinance it may pertain or might need to be changed, feel free, if it's okay with the chair, for you to reach out to me directly
Oh, yeah,
rather
yeah.
than through him. But reach out to me and I'll help you find that ordinance so you can tweak it.
Yeah, as long as
Okay?
four planning board members don't convene at the same time.
Email me directly or come in one by one,
Yep.
please, and thank you.
Please.
But I will help you find the ordinance to which each of these pertains, if you would like, okay?
Can I just ask one question in this? I know we're talking about tabling this, but because I'm pretty sure I know the answer. This Dennis Jackson asked for definitions of steep slopes. Isn't that clearly defined in the land use ordinance?
Actually, we do not appear to have a specific actual definition in the definition section of steep slopes.
That's why he's asking for it.
I did not review. I know that there are.
Well, I know each quoted, several places that they say steep slopes, but typically in the definitions, it would give it a definition. They're not going to define it in every paragraph.
There
but he
is
did say
nothing
he
in our
reviewed it and didn't
definitions.
find the definition at all.
Nothing in the
Yeah,
LUO.
but found no definition.
There is absolutely no definition for that in the LUO.
Well-
There are several definitions. In my personal opinion, is that the LUO is lacking several definitions in the definitions section.
That sounds like an
I
easy.
agree.
That makes it
Yeah.
user friendly.
I agree. Is it, because I thought, I've dealt with this in the past, steep slopes, And I don't know if maybe it's just an engineering standard that spells that out, but it's interesting that it's not.
It's very interesting to me as well that it's not covered in our LUO. It should have been defined because it is referred to so frequently in certain areas of
Because
the LUO.
it is important. I mean, if you have a hilly lot or property, you know, what's a steep slope, you know? if
What's
you're-
steep to you might not be steep to me.
Right.
Yep, we need a specific definition, and actually, I'm kind of running into, I went and looked at a little bit of excavation, I guess you could call it, down on Pine Hill, and like, steep slope. It's a hell of a steep slope, but where do you call that? Like, I got no definition, I got no teeth on it. So I'm trying to
Well,
figure it out.
construction is different, I think. The
This
construction
is
is
like-
defined, as far as I know, as a 3-to-1. Anything beyond a 3-to-1 is a steep slope.
We need to have it
It's a
in the
ratio.
LUL. So, hey, Les, you just got yourself a job. Write a definition for steep slopes. See?
Anything over 3-to-1.
There you go.
Bring it,
See how easy that was?
bring it to
I mean,
the
that's
meeting.
a pretty standard,
That's just for R3. What's R2?
pretty standard. Yeah, that's only in R3, though.
I'll get you a definition.
Well, you know,
Get you
also,
one for a
if
civil
you,
engineer.
Okay, please do.
if you go into what Envision Berwick put out here, in their last thing, where they're talking about cluster developments, they also use the term prime agriculture land, prime forest land, and town's prime farmland and agricultural district. What is prime?
Yeah, that's
Is there a
pretty
definition
subjective.
of prime?
Yeah, that's.
Is there subprime too?
Yes, actually, there is.
Of course. We're not ready for prime time.
There actually is. Whether it's
It's
called out in the
based-
LUL, I don't know, but I will look.
Okay.
I was kind of talking to James with that, and what he told me, it's based on soil.
Soil quality? Okay.
There's a soils map.
Oh, Hannah.
Hannah's
The
talking.
state puts out a soils map and it determines prime farmland and farmland of statewide significance, I think, are the two breakdowns, and it's dependent on the types of soils and how they drain and all that kind of stuff.
Forgot you were here, Hannah. Sorry. Hi.
Great.
But, I mean, another
good to
question that I brought up with James is, after a certain amount of time, that prime soil changes. Like, you give it 3 years, and you're having something totally different than what was grassland. You're not having grassland anymore. You now have vines, you have other types of weeds, you have quick-growing trees that all change.
Water tables change.
Yeah, the water table changes.
I think
That's
that
how often it's updated.
Above
Right.
my pay grade,
Yeah.
above hers too.
did they use the U.S. Geological Survey for that? Do you know?
It's a let me see.
It has something to do with the main farmland.
Web soil survey. USDA, I think.
Yeah.
That's part of that.
Yeah, well, this particular one was talking about R3, so that's farmland.
Yeah, it's all agriculture.
So as long as we know that there is something considered prime farm, or I know now, there's something considered prime, and that's really something that's on some map somewhere, that's good to know.
And I think that in reading things, a lot of times I get lost in legalese because everything gets defined. You know, you read a sentence that's supposed to say one thing, but 10 times it tells you what the words that you just read mean, which are important, right? But I don't want to get lost in it either. I mean, there's some times when I think that we can read it and get the gist of what they're talking about, but somebody else might argue, well, that's not really what I think it means. So I guess we're going back and forth. We kind of need the definitions. There's one part, that and I know we're not going to get into this, but there's one part in one of the things where it talks about how a tiered system of permits will help local developers, but not big developers. Well, okay, that's kind of a really vague way of saying, you know,
We don't want you here.
right, and we have
Right.
to be careful
Yes.
about not limiting somebody's ability to develop a land if they bought it, whether they're from Berwick or from
New York,
New York, right? So,
and like how I'll quote Tom Wright again, we need to be welcoming to all.
correct.
Well, and I think that we might as well just talk about some of this stuff, because I really, this gentleman, this Johnny Hasbrook's email particularly stood out to me. And, because one of the things that we talked about with the attorney was that, denying somebody the use of their land is denying them their constitutional rights.
That's correct.
And, this guy makes a really good point. A son of a farmer, same scenario Tom Wright was talking about. And, he basically says in here, I can't find it right off the top, but basically says in here that you basically take away the value of somebody's property.
If you can only develop a certain amount of it.
Right, so somebody has 50 acres, and a big developer might pay $1 million for that property, but a local guy can't pay the $1 million, so you basically take that property from that guy, might be all he has in his life, right, is his whole estate.
And he's burdened with the taxes on it, too.
And he's burdened with the taxes on it. So I think that that's an important piece to think about, too, so.
Yeah. There's a fine line.
I'm not of that camp of, stopping outside developers from developing, because, when I first moved to this town, nobody was developing. There were very, very few developers. And what does that leave you with?
Well, everybody has to meet the same land use ordinances.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't have them special for locals and special for out-of-towners.
Right.
They're just what they are. Doesn't matter what it says on the truck that's bringing the equipment in.
Right. You're right.
I agree, and the person, the homeowner that's selling the land is benefiting from that. And in times like today, where everything is crazy high through the roof,
Right.
Anyways, that's my
Good point.
It was nice to see the a counter opinion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I thought it was well written myself.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on now. Okay. Findings of facts approval. We have a bunch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them.
I had one question on the Wentworth Solar with regard to the surety bond for decommissioning. In the conditions, it does not specifically talk about the recalculation and the periodicity. I know we've talked about that before.
Well, I
And I
believe
did
the
that
state
one.
sets that all up now, right?
Is that, it
Yeah.
is through the state?
The state has
State does it now.
mandates that
Okay.
that recommissioning be a certain number of percentage or money or whatever. It's
Yeah.
kind of taken out of
It's
our
after
hands.
15 years, I think it is, and then every 5 years after that, and then
Right, we read it at the last meeting.
Hannah?
Yeah.
Went through that.
Okay, it just
I know
wasn't.
we
No,
talked
no.
about this when this project was approved.
Yes.
And I know, Phil, you had asked for that to be a condition, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we ended with the conclusion that that is a requirement by the state, by some licensing somebody.
Okay.
That they have to do the revaluation, so we didn't need to make it a specific condition by this board since they're already required to do it.
Fair enough.
Also, I left it off.
Okay, thank you very
you.
much. I'd like to make a motion that we find that complete.
approve the
Or
findings of fact.
approved. Approve. Is that what we're looking for?
Yeah, approve the findings of fact.
All right.
Yeah.
I
I'll
will make
second that.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor? Okay. There's that one. Next is Norman Court, major subdivision, findings of fact.
I'm going to recuse myself.
Thank you, Les.
No outliers.
And this one was lengthy because it was also technically a conditional use, so there was a lot of standards listed in this one.
Yeah.
So
Thank-
it's different from a subdivision would.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking that one, Hannah.
Which all the standards have been met.
Yes.
There were no waivers.
Well, I assume these wouldn't be put in front of us unless all of the standards were met, correct?
Correct.
Hopefully you wouldn't have approved it if all.
Right.
Good point.
I'll make a motion that we find the finding of fact
Nope, we approve the findings of fact.
We approve the finding of fact.
I'll second that.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor? All right, there's that one. Next is Silver Therapeutics. Conditional use and site plan review.
And it's what, for just a bigger
The driveway, yeah, the parking lot,
Parking
yeah.
lot. That was it.
Yeah.
The 30 cars.
And their conditions were any modifications to this site plan as approved must be reviewed and approved by the planning board, and the applicant must obtain all necessary state and local permits for construction.
Somebody, I don't want to make all the motions.
I'll make a motion that we approve the finding of facts for Silver Therapeutics.
I will second.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor? All right, there's that. Next is Navina Estates subdivision amendment. Lot
Again,
line
we'll recuse
adjustment.
myself.
And this was pretty straightforward. I'll make a motion that we approve the findings of fact.
I will second.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor? All right. Next is JoJo's Cafe. JoJo Cafe, conditional use.
They're up and running, right?
Yes,
Oh,
yes they
excellent.
are.
Awesome.
I will make a motion to approve the findings of fact for JoJo's Cafe.
I will second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
I was not here during that, so I'll not vote.
You'll abstain?
Abstain.
Okay. Next is Brian's Trailer Repair.
This one was just for the waiver for the lot size, is that?
Yeah.
Wasn't it
You
leasing?
get an employee. You want
For the
to-
second employee.
Second
Right.
employee.
Yeah.
Yep.
Got the
Yep.
And with the land use
Yeah,
update,
the irony
he
is
didn't need
he
to
no longer
have
needs
the
that.
Yes.
more
square
space.
footage.
Yep.
Yep. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor? All right, there's that. Next is the second public comment. Seeing no one's here, I'm going to close the public comment. And next is informational items. Do you have anything, Irish or Terry?
Did you want me to address that email?
Yes, please.
So it was inquired of me why some of the businesses across the street have gone before the planning board and some have not. And it was brought to my attention that there was actually an email exchange. Mike has the copy of it. May I come grab it? Yep.
This is with Lee J. and James.
Oh, I just want to grab the date off of this. So, long story short, back on December 8th of 2022, Lee J responded that there's really nothing for the planning board to review in regards to businesses going over there because all of the things that you guys would typically review for were already reviewed by Lee J. The reason you guys did see some of the businesses over there was because James had made the decision, because he wasn't certain prior to that, he instructed Tammy, who was the planner at the time, to require those businesses to come before the board. But there's really nothing for the board to review. If they meet the ability to use the space, then they get to use the space. So,
So how does that, and I mean, just playing devil's advocate, case in point, the cafe we just approved, right?
Mm-hmm.
How is that different?
because the cafe that you guys just approved,
Mhm.
you guys had to review it. It had to come before the board so that it could go to the planners to be reviewed for things like parking and accessibility or what have you. All the little pieces that we look for to make sure that it actually complies with our ordinances. That entire site was reviewed as one big piece. So all those little pieces that you guys would typically be looking for
Have already been
have
met.
already been reviewed and approved by Lee J.
So all
there
future
are-
businesses going in there, is that how that's going to be?
They already have the right number of parking spaces.
Yep.
They already have the right size building.
To
they already-
answer your question, yes and no.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
It's not a definite yes, because, for example, one of the
There's
things that we were
certain
talking
uses.
about that James James was actually going to float by Lee J. They may have to come back because they specified most of the buildings. Let me see if I'm clear as mud, and I apologize. This is cold. It's got my whole head going. Basically, what it amounts up to is they had most of their areas, most of their buildings did not have a specified use. So, but they were all reviewed as though they were potentially any use, except, this is where there's some confusion that we have to check into. They did label, for example, the point of contention right now, they labeled one particular spot to be a bank. The bank has backed out. The bank is no longer going to be there. They're looking at a convenience store. Because they specifically called out that use, we're probably going to make them come before you to change that specific use for that specific place because they specified it. But otherwise, Lee J reviewed this as a site as a whole. And that's why there's also a condition there that before they build the last building, because the biggest thing is with this type of a development, especially when you're having commercial and residential in the same spot, is parking, right? We all know parking's a big problem. Parking takes up a lot of space. The town of Berwick is trying to get away from some of the more archaic views of parking that will leave you with big empty lots like Walmart and Home Depot have just because somebody says so. But before they can put up their last building, they do have to have the whole project reviewed again. And if they do not meet the parking requirements for all combined uses, then they can't put that last building up because they'll have to dedicate that space to parking or they'll have to build something for parking. So that's the kind of the convoluted long and short of it.
Question
Yes.
on what you said. When you say Lee J reviewed the plans.
Well, and the planning board as well.
Yes.
It's
I know,
not just Lee
but
J.
the plans that were reviewed did not have specifics. It had a building this many square feet with nothing in it, no businesses or anything defined. How could they know?
Well, they know that all the first floor is commercial.
I know, I'm talking about this one over here.
Yeah.
It was just an open space.
Yep, but so what they did was, it's my understanding, and Hannah, correct me if I'm wrong, when they were reviewing the edge, they were reviewing it as though more towards what uses would we not allow there versus what could we.
So I understand what you're saying. I'm just,
Yeah.
if they're looking to review something, there was nothing there to review other than.
Right, I think I'm with you, and I think the question I would ask is, so it almost seems like they put this building before the planning board, and they said, okay, there's going to be
Mixed
9
use.
units.
Yeah.
Mixed use or something.
And they're going to be mixed use, so then mixed use has a category of businesses that are approved for mixed use, or I guess it's not mixed use, right?
It's commercial use.
No, mixed
Commercial
use would
use.
include residential.
Right.
So that
depending
could
on
be
how
a
you're
pizza
looking at
shop,
it.
it could be a, because there's like a dental clinic in there, right?
Yeah, right.
So
But that came before the board.
Here, let me-
That's the confusion is, so
Let
we-
me read this to you directly
Okay.
instead of trying
So
to
did
summarize.
Bad Wolf.
I was hoping to
Yeah.
make it a
So
little
did the
shorter by
fitness.
summarizing it, but so he says, it's important to know there is no agreement that lays it out, da-da-da. As you're aware, during the original review of the project, and this is from Lee J, by the way, during the original review of the project, I had been involved by assisting the planning board through the review process. As part of that process, the board looked at all of the aspects of the development, from sewer and water layouts as well as capacity issues, traffic impacts based on full build-out, as well as the parking for the entire lot. As your last planner had left, it was brought to my attention the developer and prospective businesses were being required to go to the planning board for approvals, and then I questioned why. They were uses that were proposed in existing buildings, and in this particular case, one that was already constructed. I thought it did not make sense to make a small business go through a costly process for something already been reviewed for all the impacts they could potentially create. It seems redundant to do this. As for the rest of the development, each building on the approved plan has a designated use, i.e. housing, coffee shop, bank, etc. It seems unless the use were to change to, say, light industrial or warehouse use, it made no sense to go back through planning board since the potential impacts have already been reviewed for a particular use in a particular structure. If the use, building footprint, parking lot design, or some other aspect of the project were to change, they should come back for review. So basically, they reviewed, according to Lee J's email, which December 8th, he wrote that so a year ago, he stated that existed, that building had already had all the potential existing uses, and that unless it was changed to something that would be, so when you're looking at, from a planning and a code perspective, things like warehouse or industrial uses are different than any sort of retail, any sort of medical. Those are different.
So it got approved for a category of businesses.
More or less, yes. It got approved for that lighter use category versus a
So are
hazard.
there any checks and balances, or is it just willy-nilly, whoever wants to lease a spot in there?
They have
Like
to come through me.
Public, but what about public comment, any of that stuff? Are we just foregoing all of that, and it's between you and Lee J to assess out who gets in, who doesn't get in? Because I just, to me, that, and I'm just, maybe I don't fully grasp the process, but it just seems, for lack of a better term, no process. I mean, we go through all of this, like whenever a new business wants to go into a building, they come before the board, they present, and they say, this is what we want to bring to your town, and this is why, and this is the benefit. And I think there's a lot of value in that for the viewers and the townspeople to get to know the business owner and what they're bringing.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I'm 50-50 on this one for the Edge, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you why. Because from my end of things, something like that, and no offense, Hannah, to you or Lee J for any of this, something like that, does it make sense to have a grouping or listing, so to speak, of approved uses? Absolutely. My problem is I don't see anywhere where those specific approved uses were called out for that development.
Right.
And that's something that I think I may request them to provide a list of what they're anticipating their proposed uses, because to me, what I would do, honestly, this is the 50, that was the 50 against. The 54 is, if I were guiding them through this process right now, I would tell them, here's the list of approved uses in this town. You tell me what you think you might put in there so we can review it for all of them, specifically to prevent you guys from having to see each one. Because here's the reality. While you might say, and yes, I get it, public comment, it's important for people to have their voices heard. If they meet all the performance standards, it's not like in a subdivision, no offense to the developers here, in a subdivision you have an opportunity for I'll get him a lollipop after, make him feel better. In a development, you have the opportunity, we've had some great discourse between abutters and developers and developers engineers with, I'd like to see this makes it more palatable, etc. It's a business, the buildings are already built. What are they going to come and say? I don't want it in my town. Well, it's an approved use.
I just think we need to be.
You get to say you don't want it, but it doesn't mean that you guys can do anything about it.
Right.
Fair enough. I just want us to be sensitive to the optics, okay? The optics on this are, here's this new contentious development, which it is to some people in the town. I think it's a great thing for our town. The growth, the town center, it's going to be great. But we are delegating that process, and I have a lot of respect for Lee J and a lot of respect for SMPDC and everything that they do for us, but we are delegating that authority and that process to somebody that does not even live in our town. And I think that the optics on that from the outside looking in, I just want us to be sensitive to that.
Well,
And-
I don't think that Lee J or SMPDC has the say on what's the use for that. Like,
so
Yeah,
they're-
we're not reviewing any of the business.
right. They're going to Irish. They're going to Irish to put a business in.
Okay.
And if it's an
And
approved
as long as
use
it's a
for
light,
that area.
like a retail light use commercial, it's already okayed. If
Don't we
it's-
have in our land use ordinance businesses that we can't have in town? Aren't there a
Yes.
few that we can't have?
Yes. Yes.
So we already have a limit.
Yeah,
Of,
yeah.
Okay.
From
And-
here up, you can,
Right.
know.
Aroma
So I
Joe's,
think-
Dunkin' Donuts,
I think
a
my thing
bank.
is, if you like that basically is like a strip mall.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you got a strip mall approved for
Whoever leases it,
retail
leases
use,
it.
Right.
Whoever
leases
leases
it,
it, leases it. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
But if you have
Yeah.
it for retail use, and then they want to put a restaurant in there, then I
Then
would
they
see
have
that
to
as
come
having
back
to come
before
back
the
in front
planning
of the
board.
planning
Like, I
board
think the
because that's
bank
what
change
changes
is
For
an
the use.
important
example-
one to
Right.
review.
Yes.
That's reasonable.
So the
Yeah.
bank change, and
Thank you
just
for
like
spelling it out in dummy terms.
another thing,
I was
Get
trying
over
to be
here.
clear that that's what,
Yeah.
that's what happened.
it's
Yeah, makes
it's
sense.
similar to like where, and I don't know if I'm gonna get in hoop for this, but let me throw out a new business name for you, Untrucked. When they were going in there, I was like, you guys are opening when? Because you guys haven't been before the planning board, but in looking at it, that use was already an allowed use in that spot because
It's been a restaurant
unbeknownst to me,
several
it has
times.
been a restaurant since apparently forever.
Forever.
I'm really mad that I can't eat right now because grilled cheese, they have a grilled cheese truck. But that being said, if that restaurant then goes, no ill will towards Untrucked, but let's say they decide they're going to relocate, they're going to move somewhere else, something happens, and somebody wants to put a storefront in there, then no, that's not the same use. They'll have to come back. So can they put in something? Yes. Can it be just all willy-nilly? No. We do have guidelines, and I do have to follow them. And honestly, if there's any question, if I have any question as to whether or not that use was something that was part of the approval, not only will I refer to Lee J, but honestly, if I have to make the decision, I'd like to think you all know by now, well, you two are newer, but I think the rest of you know by now, I will always err on the side of caution. So if I'm not sure that that use should be allowed without being viewed by the planning board, I'm going to make them come here. It's my choice, ultimately, to force them through there, unless James vetoes me. But if I refuse to issue them an occupancy for their business without them coming here, then
I think that's one of the big things. So I have two bits of homework for before the 14th. One is that overlay district, and the other one is I'm going to make a recommendation for being able to do administrative changes. You being able to do administrative changes versus having to come back from a planning board for simple things.
yeah, I want to see it. Something that I've talked with Lee J and Hannah about, but I don't know if it's ever gotten pushed forward more, that I was hoping to go to the board with
Case in point, like a lot line adjustment. You know,
A lot
that's
line
something
adjustment
that could
or-
be easily done through you, and it doesn't need to involve us.
something that's staff level, but I do want to
Right.
specify in case anybody feels like getting creative in writing this. I'm looking for a staff level review, which would be myself, planning, whether that be Terry or Hannah,
Yeah.
police, fire, all of the businesses. I don't want to ever be the only one making a decision unless it's only. comes
It
down
needs to
to
be
I don't-
collective.
I don't know how you detail and spell that out, but you know.
I
like
already
the
have
lot
it
line.
from Lee J from another
Yeah.
municipality, so maybe I'll forward that to the board.
It's a common thing that some towns do for things like minor conditional uses. You know, if you're not building a new building, you know, I'm going to go in and I want to sell, I don't know, rocks. You're not going to have, I'm going to sell rocks online. I'm not going to have customers. I'm not going to, coming into my building, I'm not going to have XYZ types of, I'm not building a new building, I'm not doing a new parking lot, all that kind of stuff that typically the board would look at that application and say, okay, that doesn't apply. I think we can waive the site walk. Things like that would go to the staff review committee. So the people who would typically be involved from the planning board meeting, like the fire, like the police, like code, like planning, they all still get to weigh in, but we don't need to go through the full planning board process to approve what the board would ultimately approve after a much lengthier thing.
Yeah. It'll cut out at least a month, if not more.
Yeah, a month to 2 months.
Of
Save
process.
them,
Oh, yeah.
save them
Which is what
endless
Integrity
money.
Construction just went through, getting the
Right.
Yeah,
cabinet
exactly.
shop.
And typically in those processes, there's something written into the ordinance where if at any point anybody involved in the staff level review thinks that it needs further review by the planning board, they can kick it up to the planning board, and that applicant has to come in front of the board and continue the full process that they would have otherwise.
Yeah, it gives everybody, so it's not an all on me, and I don't become I never want to be put in a position where anybody feels like I'm the be all end all of a process.
You don't want to be the dictator?
No. No. I can't even dictate myself, for crying out loud. You want me to dictate a town? Hi-yo. What'd you say?
I said she's not like that.
I'll slip you that 50 for
All
saying
right.
that on the way out.
All right. I think that was pretty good. Any other informational items?
I have just one real quick one. A few months ago, we talked about not really having a strict set of rules or guidelines for the committee, for the planning board to run by, what am I trying to think of the?
No Robert's rules.
That, yeah, we didn't have bylaws, that's what I'm trying to
Right,
say.
yeah.
So, if the board permits, I would like to put together a rough draft of maybe some bylaws to look at, to review, and possibly accept for the board.
Yeah, as long as it's not the whole Robert's
No,
Rules
no,
of
no,
Order.
no, it would
have
have
you
to be
seen
in-
that book?
I have.
It's
So
a big book.
It won't be
I
that.
have it.
Big
It's-
book.
Yeah.
It won't be that. No, it'll pertain only to really what we do.
Yep.
And be simplified in English, so that we know what it means.
Yep.
And it's just a rough draft, so that obviously it's a starting point.
Yep. Yeah.
So
That'd be great. Okay, anything else? No?
I
Okay.
don't think I have anything for you.
Adjournment.
If there are no further items for consideration from the esteemed Burgess Meeting Room in the depths of the Berwick Town Hall, I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, good night.